The NFL draft is just a couple of weeks away, and the Denver Broncos, they pick in round 2, but we tell you why. George Paton goes with an all-elite draft class here in the 2022 NFL draft. We talk about some of the key picks the Broncos made, adding starter quality depth right away. You get that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back into a brand new episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked on NFL Network, your team every day from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked on Network and 9 News. Broncos country, thank you so much for making Locked on Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format. For watching us here on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage. And make sure you smash that like button for the algorithm here. But Sayre, my friend, hey, we conducted our first official mock draft Monday, and we went with all elite talent, as if we were George Paton, and we know he loves elite athletic players. We went with the whole forte amount, maybe what we assume he might do. Let's get into the picks here today. The Broncos, obviously, no first-round pick. Their first-round pick is Russell Wilson. I think that's a pretty good first-round pick here. I don't know about you.
You know, I do like that first-round pick, Cody. Actually, I was just talking to somebody about that today, that during the first round of the NFL draft, I'm going to be rocking the Russell Wilson jersey. I don't smoke cigars, but, you know, that vibe will be present. It will be absolutely present. So I'm excited for the first round of the draft to sit back, watch other teams make stupid decisions, some good decisions, and react and just have fun with it. I mean, it's going to be a blast for Broncos fans. I feel like we'll get to see, I'm sure the social media team for the Denver Broncos has something up their sleeves for the first night of the draft for Broncos fans to just kind of enjoy. But I'm looking forward to it personally. And hey, you never know. I mean, maybe George Paton will sneak his way back in there.
Well, in our mock draft that we did, we entertained the idea of trading back into round 1. However, they wanted additional capital. They wanted some second and third round picks in this year's draft for Denver to move back in round 1. I wasn't thinking, okay, hey, you know what? Probably not the right move considering some of the back end talent that we were able to get. So the pick is in round 2. Pick number 64, the Denver Broncos. They add an edge rusher, Arnold Ebiketie, out of Penn State. Now, Sayre, as we've talked about, we're going with the whole elite athleticism profile here. He's a 6'2", 250-pound edge rusher, and he's got a RAS score. You know, we're big RAS holes over here. 9.07 according to the relative athletic score, which by all accounts is considered elite here. But the Broncos getting an edge rusher here that could potentially work his way into the rotation even from week 1.
And, I mean, this past season, Cody, at Penn State, 18 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, a couple of forced fumbles. So, obviously, the production is there. And last year, you know, he was working in a rotation. Remember, there were guys at Penn State. Odafe Owe was there. And then there was another guy that went in the later rounds of the draft. I remember, now we're on to this new draft class. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was probably the better overall player in college, productive-wise. So I really like this guy. And Penn State, man, they just seem to be cranking out these crazy athletes these days, especially at the defensive linebacker positions, whether it's pass rusher or just off-ball guys. We saw Micah Parsons last year, like I mentioned, Owe, and now Ebiketie. I mean, he's got freakish athletic skills, and I think that's what the Broncos need. Look, you got 2 pass rushers with a history of injuries, right? Randy Gregory, Bradley Chubb. You really got to have some insurance there. And this is more than insurance. This is somebody that you would be drafting to develop into an eventual starter or to play starter snaps. We know, Cody, the Broncos plan on playing a lot in the nickel and a lot in the dime. And so what does that mean? That means to me that you're going to have to rotate those edge players quite a bit. Gone are the days of guys playing 80, 90% of the snaps out there. You have to rotate guys. And look, we've seen the Los Angeles Rams do that exceptionally well. On a previous episode, we talked about how they rotated in players like Justin Hollins to their already deep rotation with Von Miller and Leonard Floyd. And, you know, in previous years, Samson Ebicom, Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, tons of guys that come off the edge in Los Angeles. I think we're going to see a committee approach, not necessarily like a high degree, but I think we're going to see a committee approach off the edge, and Ebiketie is a guy that can make an impact on a low amount of snaps.
You mentioned the word by committee approach. Well, that is exactly what Nathaniel Hackett has said that he could envision for the Broncos backfield. So, Sayre, here in round 3 at pick number 75, when the Broncos are back on the clock, it was super hard to pass this guy up if he was available. And that is Breece Hall, running back out of Iowa State, a 5'11", 217-pound freak of nature with a 9.96 RAS score. And he's a guy that can obviously churn it out on the ground as a receiver out of the backfield. And man, I tell you what, just thinking about maybe the pairing there between Javonte Williams, and even throwing Mike Boone in there, Denver might have a very sneaky, underrated backfield if, in fact, that this is one of the selections.
It would be amazing. I mean, this pick would have me dancing, jumping for joy on draft day, Cody, because you know me, I love being greedy with offensive weapons. That's why, back in the day, I wanted Albert O, even though they already had Noah Fant. I like being greedy at the offensive skill positions, and Breece Hall is a guy, like you mentioned, he can do everything for you. He's not only a great running back, but man, he's one of the better pass catching backs in this draft. And I think the fact that he put up such an elite level workout, Cody, I think that NFL teams are going to fall in love with him. Like we were talking about this while we were doing the mock draft, like people are going to ream us for him not likely being there in the real draft, but hey, you never know. I mean, there was a time when, remember, John Elway said they didn't prepare a scenario where I think it was Jerry Jeudy would be available, or maybe it was Bradley Chubb, or maybe both guys. But hey, both of those things happened. So you just got to be prepared for the unexpected. So if Breece Hall is there with that third round pick number 75 overall, I think you'd have to be jumping for joy at the opportunity to pair him up with Javonte Williams.
The Broncos contain yet another pick in round 3 at pick number 96, and we had selected Logan Hall, a defensive tackle out of Houston. He's a 6'6", 283-pound monster on the defensive interior, and his RAS score is at a 9.82 for someone who's 6'6", 283 pounds. This right here screams Shelby Harris replacement on the defensive line, a guy who could play a 3 technique, which is on the outside shoulder of the offensive guard. He could play the 4-eye, the inside shade of an offensive tackle. He could play a 1 tech. He could play a 2-eye. He could play anywhere on the defensive line, and even play in the 5 if you need him to. Sayre, this is a monster of a pickup here for the Broncos in round 3.
Well, and like you said, he can play anywhere, and he did at Houston. He played all over that defensive line, and you can watch. You just search his name on Twitter, you're going to find clips of him doing all sorts of different things, using that explosiveness, using that length, using that quickness, using his speed. He uses it all, and he does it well. So I would be very excited about this. Look, I know a lot of people are going to wonder, like, well, where's this position or where's that position? Look, when we're putting together a mock draft, or when you're putting together a mock draft, sometimes you don't just go straight for your needs. People are going to want a tight end. That's going to come eventually. Yeah. But you got to go with the best guys available. And like you said, Cody, we're really going for elite level athletes. But not only just that, but players like you said, I mean, Shelby Harris. Have the Broncos effectively replaced him with DJ Jones? Or would it be nice for them to be able to slide DJ Jones inside on certain downs or in certain situations? Again, we talk about rotation. You talk about committee. You have to have depth. Logan Hall may not be a tight end who fits a direct need per se, but he does fit a need in terms of you need to have defensive line depth, and you want to continue to add guys that can get after those quarterbacks in the star-studded AFC West.
Well, the Broncos in rounds 4 through 7, they're going to address by adding in a ridiculously elite athletic tight end. Who is that tight end, and why did we select him for the Denver Broncos? You get that and more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about the sponsor. Today's episode of the show, it's our friends over there, Athletic Greens, and I take AG1 every single day because of the added health benefits that it has added to my life. And when you consume Athletic Greens, with one scoop, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. And this special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, and all of these things all in one. And Sayre, ever since I've started taking AG1 sent over by our good friends over there, Athletic Greens, I have felt tremendously better over the last 3 weeks, almost to a month. I just purchased a brand new bag, a 30-day supply as well, and I'm loving the added benefits of the guy. I wake up with more energy. I'm able to crank out and power through a very grueling workout or a HIIT cardio session, and and my gut health. Like I said, reduces bloating that you get in your day-to-day there. That's why I'm a huge fan of AG1. And right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into flu season and cold season. It's just one scoop and a cold cup of water every single day, and that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase today. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And our good friends over there, betonline.net. And betonline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and sports information this season. And you can find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this upcoming season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Sayre, let's get into rounds 4 through 7 here as we act as the Denver Broncos general manager in the latest mock draft Monday. Once again, Broncos country, thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Both Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we are so grateful for you taking time out of your day to tune in for all Denver Broncos news, content, and conversation courtesy of Locked On Broncos. But Sayre, with that said, the Broncos, we're sticking with the athletic elite theme here for this team here. And what a pick here to start things off. So the Broncos in round 4 have picks 115 and 116. Well, pick number 115, we selected tight end Jelani Woods out of Virginia, who's a 6'7", 253-pound freak of nature, one of the highest scoring athletic performances when it comes to testing overall, a perfect 10 score on the relative athletic score foundation. Just thinking about maybe him and Albert Okwuegbunam in a tight end set together when you go 2 tight ends, I tell you what, they could do a lot of things. You can play him in the slot. You can play him on the outside. You don't necessarily have to put him as the inline guy. Denver can just go all weapons out with Russell Wilson this season. This is a fantastic pick.
It is, and I think at 6'7", you're also looking at a potential red zone just nightmare for defenses to have to cover. You know, it's one thing to be 6'7" and be able to be a field stretcher, but it's another thing to be able to say, all right, let's see what defensive back you can put up against this guy, and we'll just throw it up to him and see how you defend it. I mean, that's what made Jimmy Graham so good for so many years, right? So I think that's something that I think you would be looking at with Jelani Woods, and that's why he's become such a popular mock draft pick for a lot of Broncos fans who put together mock drafts, because maybe you don't get Trey McBride in the second round. You know, maybe that doesn't work out and that doesn't happen. I know a lot of Colorado State fans would love to see Trey McBride stay in Colorado, but man, in the middle rounds, Jelani Woods is a name that I think is picking up a lot of steam, that athletic talent. Like you said, Cody, that's really what George Paton prioritized in his first NFL draft. And hey, if it ain't broke, don't go trying to fix it, right? He won the best draft in the award, which I didn't even know they gave out until George Paton won it. But hey, you won the best draft award. Stick with what was working for you and go after a guy like this who can be a matchup nightmare with Albert Okwuegbunam.
Well, the Broncos are on the clock with the very next pick as well, right after the Jelani Woods pick, and we selected Troy Andersen, linebacker out of Montana State. He's a 6'3", 241-pound athletic coverage linebacker that can play against the run, a perfect 10 score in the RAS system here. You know, and Sayre, one of the things too, one of his comps that I'm seeing from a lot of databases and NFL draft analysts is that kind of like Fred Warner from the San Francisco 49ers, a guy who's just this elite athletic player. And what have we talked about with the Denver Broncos? What they really need. They need somebody who can be a true athletic guy. And as we know, the Broncos plan apparently to rotate Baron Browning between inside backer and edge rusher gives them flexibility to do a lot of different things. Jonas Griffith was going to be a restricted free agent after this upcoming season. The Broncos like what they've seen from him. You add him to the mix. I mean, he could easily overtake an Alex Singleton here coming in right away. But, man, I like the pickup because I know a lot of Broncos fans also wanted Chad Muma. But, at this point, he was way off the board before the Broncos ever had a chance at him.
And I think a lot of fans of whatever team Troy Andersen ends up going to, if it is the Denver Broncos, are going to really appreciate what this guy did at the college level. We were talking about this off the air, Cody, just the fact that, he was an all-conference selection at the quarterback position previously, and he has a 1,000-yard rushing season on his ledger, and then he turns around and he goes and wins the defensive player of the year in his conference there at Montana State. Just a freakishly gifted, freakishly talented athlete, and just football player. That's just a pure football player. To use a NFL draft cliche, if I may, he's just a flat out football player, and he knows he knows exactly what he's supposed to do out there at all times, regardless of what he's being asked to do. So, and according to what I've read about him, Cody, he'll be a stud for you on special teams right away, and you can't ask for much more than that from a 4th-round pick. But I think you're right. He could easily, with his athletic talent and his football IQ, he could easily overtake a guy like Alex Singleton in his rookie season for a starting position.
Now we'll see how Broncos country feels about this pick here. But in round number 5, K, this was too hard to pass up. Sayre and I, we sat there and were like, you know what? Why not? Send it. For the brand, okay? We're going for the brand here on today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. Matt Araiza, punter out of San Diego State, a 6'1", 200-pound punter who is athletic as all can be. I mean, you can do different things. You want to run some fake punts. He's obviously athletic enough to be able to move a RAS score of 9.47. But let's just talk about this too. Not only can he punt the football, he can kick it as well. Like, let's say there was some sort of emergency situation. Let's say a Brandon McManus got hurt or got ill and was not able to play for some odd reason. You could rely on Matt Araiza to come in and kick. He's been known to boot in 50-yard field goals consistently at practice. I believe he has a career-long 53-yard field goal, if I'm not mistaken, as well, sir. But not to mention that he's great at flipping field position. And guess what? Tom McMahon is no longer part of the Broncos special teams unit. So you don't have to worry about maybe changing things up. You can utilize him how he does best, and especially at altitude. Man, he's going to boom it. And I hate to say it, as much as I appreciate what Sam Martin has done, this is a move that moves the needle for me.
I think so too. It really does. It's not often that a punter does that, but it's also not often that a punter comes along with the nickname the Punt God. And I think it's even more rare to see punters with a 4.56 in the 40-yard dash. Just a freakish athletic talent here. And you're right, exactly right. Here's the deal. When you're talking about flipping field position, I think the running joke that I've been hearing on Twitter and things like that, Cody, is like, well, the Broncos aren't going to have to utilize a punter all that much, but in the event that you do need a punter and you're able to utilize a guy like Matt Araiza to really flip field position for the brand, when you're able to do that kind of thing and set it up for your defense to create a short field for your offense, that is an asset that more often than not, I think it goes kind of underrated. And maybe not talked about enough, but when you have that opportunity, the Seattle Seahawks, I'll point to this. The Seattle Seahawks have had Michael Dickinson. He's one of the best punters in the league, and I made fun of them for drafting him back when they did.
Dude,
and
he booms it.
He booms it, and he's created a lot of short fields for Russell Wilson by putting the defense in a great position, and then Russell gets the ball back, and they have a short field to work with. I like the pick of a punter here, and hey, look, George Payton did that a lot with the Vikings. Took Daniel Carlson in the 5th, Jeff Locke in the 5th, Blair Welsh in the 6th. They even drafted a long snapper as recently as 2020, Cody. So we know George Payton is not afraid to take specialists with his draft capital.
Oh, we'll see if the Broncos decide to do that. We got 2 more picks here. Round 6, pick 206. You have Chase Lucas, cornerback out of Arizona State, 5'11", 180 pounds, and he's got an 8.85 RAS score, which is definitely different than some of the other scores of the players we've spoken to already here. But in terms of adding another cornerback piece, this was the best option on the table for Denver, and a guy that you can mold and develop a little bit in the nickel rotation and the dime if need be. He won't play right away here in year 1, maybe not even in year 2, but he has an opportunity to grow into a key special teams player if, in fact, the Broncos can find a role for him there. But let's talk about round 7, because this is one of the more intriguing picks here, too. Round 7, pick 232. Denver goes with a wide receiver. Wide receiver? Well, they already have these guys. Well, they need another guy in terms of options, because you never know. One injury can hamper a lot of plans here, but this is a speed threat that Denver is adding. Bo Melton, wide receiver out of Rutgers, 5'11", 189 pounds. I believe he ran like a 4.38 in the 40-yard dash, so he's got that speed. He can create separation. A lot of his comps have been linked to kind of Julian Edelman-esque in terms of maybe utilization, but he's not the Tyreek Hill option. Like, no one's like Tyreek Hill. That's the thing. But he's got the ability to get behind defenses, which is, you can never have enough guys, especially like you have KJ Hamler coming off of an ACL injury. It's nice to have maybe another guy that can maybe do what you're expecting a guy like KJ Hamler to do. Quick thoughts on this?
Yeah, and he's got a little bit of experience returning kicks and punts. Not a ton, but he's got some experience back there, so maybe added value in that regard and get a speedy guy back there to do that. But I like the idea. You take a little dart throw here at the wide receiver position. You got Seth Williams last year in a dart throw situation. I like Bo Melton, a completely different style of player. Seth Williams, big guy, big, strong guy. Bo Melton, a smaller, speedy guy. I like the contrast. I like the dart throws. This is totally, if I was wearing for the brand, Cody, that's my brand of NFL draft pick right there. Bo Melton in the 7th. I love it.
Let us know your thoughts on the Broncos draft selections here, Broncos Country, in the YouTube comment section down below. Be sure to reply with your thoughts, and we're going to tell you why we believe that all the players that the Broncos have chosen in this mock draft from rounds 2 through 5 can be an impact player from day one, week one. We tell you why coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about our good friends over there at Built Bar. And as you know, ladies and gentlemen, Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar that is out there on the market today. There are 9 amazing original flavors, plus the occasional limited time flavor like the churro puffs, the banana cream puffs, and you can check out the new options that Built Bar is adding every single month to their website at built.com. And if you need a little bit of extra fuel to get yourself through your day, well, each bar of Built Bar contains 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, and only 4 grams of sugar. For something that contains 100% milk chocolate, it's soft and easy to chew. That is ridiculous value for a protein bar. So go to built.com here today, go to checkout, and find a box, find a flavor that best suits you and your taste buds. And make sure when you go to checkout, you use promo code LOCKED15. That's one word, LOCKED15, LOCKED15, to get 15% off your next order at built.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Once again, Broncos Country, thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day. Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we're so grateful for all the interaction, all the love and support we get here in the comment section on social media. We love interacting with Broncos Country. Sayre, let's talk about which players we believe can be impact players, maybe even starters from day one, week one of the NFL season here. And I think you touched on it great when we were off air talking about it. I mean, ideally, looking at rounds 2 through 5 here for Denver, you can make the argument each player can play a significant role from day one here, and maybe some guys could start here. Let's take a look. Round 2, pick 64, Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State. You mentioned, I think, perfectly when we talked about the pick there. You had a history of, obviously, Randy Gregory just had shoulder surgery, will be ready to go for the season, and then you have Bradley Chubb, players that have a little bit of an injury history, have yet to finish really full seasons consistently in their career. He is a great kind of premium pickup there and starter quality edge rusher that you can add to the defense right away. And if you do have to miss a week with one of those guys being out, you're confident that you have a replacement that can step up and maybe fill that value and play that role just as well, if maybe even not better than them as the actual starter there. But you make the investment free agency with Randy Gregory. He's going to start with that type of paycheck that you're giving him there. But a lot of questions, obviously, for Bradley Chubb in the future. Then we go to Breece Hall. I mean, obviously, a really ridiculously talented running back. We've heard about the Broncos' approach to going by committee here, according to Nathaniel Hackett and Justin Outen. I mean, a combination, he and Javonte are impact players right there. Your thoughts on the first 2 to 3 rounds here for Denver and maybe why they can play and contribute right away?
Well, I think initially, just looking at this list, I would be absolutely thrilled by this draft. I just think you have the best combination of being on brand as far as RAS scores, high RAS scores, these early picks too. Ebiketie, out of the pass rusher out of Penn State, he could play kind of a similar role to what we saw from Shane Ray back in his early years with the Denver Broncos. Obviously, Shaquille Barrett was still on that roster along with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, but Shane Ray still ended up having 8 sacks, I believe, in his second season. So he played a key role in the playoffs. I think he could play a similar role if we're projecting a nice impact from Jonathan Cooper again this season, or Malik Reed for that matter. I think Ebiketie could still play a substantial role for you, and obviously Baron Browning is in that mix as well. So that gives you some really nice, enviable depth off the edge, and then Breece Hall at the running back position. To me, Cody, I love this running back draft so much. I love it so much. I would be thrilled with just about anybody the Broncos take in rounds 3 through 5 at this position. And I think personally, they should try to add some picks and get 2. I would love to see them add 2 backs from this class, but Breece Hall, I mean, he might be the best back in this class. To get him at 75 would be unbelievable. And Logan Hall in the back end of round 3. I mean, that's just an outstanding value. A guy that can play all over your D line. And like you said, maybe a Shelby Harris replacement. So to me, those top 3 picks are just great picks at positions of running back may not be everybody's favorite, but positions of value for the most part. And I love that pick. I do. Breece Hall would probably be the one pick of this draft, Cody, that would sell a lot of jerseys, to be honest with you, because he would probably go out there in his rookie season and he might score. I mean, he might score 8 to 10 touchdowns in this kind of an offense, whether it's as a runner or a receiver. He might get that kind of playing time in a 17-game season. Your backs are going to get 150 carries at a minimum, probably 2 guys. So that's just the way that I see it. And I think those top 3 picks, especially Breece Hall with that value at 75, would just be an absolute home run.
Well, looking at Jelani Woods, Troy Andersen, and Matt Araiza, I mean, we already talked about the appeal with Jelani Woods. He could be an easy plug-in right next to Albert O. You could put him in line if you want to. You could put him in the slot. You could put him on the outside. You could put him as one of those offset wings that come underneath the formation, kind of how we've seen kind of Andrew Beck used and even Noah Fant and Albert O used in the last couple of years. That's where Albert O's utilization really came from, is that wing-type player there. I think things are going to change a little bit in this style of offense, so I think we're going to see a lot of flexibility. And if you have 2 athletic tight ends, and we mentioned the red zone threat. You have Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick, who are 6'5" and 6'4" red zone threats. Now you had a 6'7" guy alongside Albert O, like double tight with those 2 guys on the outside. Okay, you know what? Hey, Russ and the Broncos red zone offense will be cooking, which they've really struggled in the last 4 to 5 years in the red zone. They haven't been that very good. And going back to even like when Peyton Manning was there in 2015, the red zone offense wasn't that good for Denver either. So I like that. Troy Andersen, we talked about the appeal of linebacker. He can be one of those guys that's waiting in the wings, could push somebody out, a couple of guys out of the entire roster, guys that George Paton really has no alliance to. But let's talk about Matt Araiza here before we close out today's episode of the show. Now, the Broncos have 2 punters on roster right now. Corliss Waitman, who they picked off waivers from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Sam Martin. And at this point, I think that they go in and they draft a Matt Araiza. Then that signifies that those 2 other punters, Sam Martin and Waitman, are probably just going to be camp bodies, or they're going to be released immediately and free to kind of go elsewhere, which at this point, too, there's some teams out there that could use a punter like Sam Martin, that could use a Corliss Waitman. But if Denver does go that route, there's no sense of having 2 punters on your roster and not playing one. He would be the starter for the Broncos at punter.
He would be, and he would be a fascinating one at that. I think he's kind of one of those guys, like, you know, Pat McAfee kind of had a big following when he was a player. There's other specialists that have had that kind of big following. I mean, there's not a lot of superstar kickers and punters in the league in terms of fan following, but I feel like Matt Araiza has a chance wherever he lands to be kind of a guy that people just a cult following, kind of like a mythical Chuck Norris, like, you know, something like that. He's going to be that kind of a guy at the NFL level. So I would love that. And I think the addition, you mentioned Corliss Waitman, I think that addition kind of signifies the Broncos are potentially looking to make a move at the punter position. So I wouldn't count this out whatsoever. And I think Araiza would obviously be the golden ticket of this draft at the punter, but there are some really good ones elsewhere. I mean, this is I'm not going to say this is a great punter draft, because who knows, but I mean, it does seem like there are more good punters in this draft than normal.
No, and I think it's something to keep an eye on as well. I think you nailed it perfectly. Anytime you have a chance to go younger and more upside in terms of talent, not to mention it'll be cheaper for a guy like Matt Araiza to be on the roster in comparison to a guy like Corliss Waitman or Sam Martin, it makes sense for the Denver Broncos. So Broncos country, this concludes our mock draft Monday. The Broncos all elite draft class of 2022. Let us know your comment section down below. Let us know what grade you're giving this mock draft. We'll write the picks in the YouTube comment and we'll pin it for you there. But make sure you continue to check out Lockdown Broncos all week long, because all year long, every single weekday, Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we have you covered with daily Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage, because for the true fan, there is never an offseason. We have you covered with everything you need to know. Plus, the Broncos here in the next week or so are going to be starting up their offseason conditioning program. We'll have complete coverage of that and more. You get that here on the Lockdown Broncos podcast.